Okay, for the upper hull, it's a lot more involved. There's multiple deck pieces, and then the bulkheads are in pairs. Also, it doesn't give you any of the numbering for the bulkheads, so you gotta assume that it's again working from front to back, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 14 again. So that's just an assumption. There's also multiple additional parts here which we'll see, which again aren't numbered here, but again I'm guessing working front to back, A, B, C, D, etc. So I've cut these out. So here's all the parts, or here's all the bulkheads, the additional braces. These again are additional, I don't know what they're for at this stage. And then we've got the keel section with the bow here in the stern. Also, there's multiple decks here, so working from lower to upper, we've got a V2 here, then you've got 2 halves for V3, 2 halves for V4, and 2 halves for V5. So that corresponds to V2, 3, 4, 5. So just have to be careful here, we get the correct decks in the correct places. So at first glance it's not too obvious. Also, what I cut out but not shown here is the final deck level, which is V6, and this is what the wood paper deck will be glued to, is the final deck. On here we can see these shapes here, so that's the gun quadrants or gun positions. So that's on a separate piece of paper, which was the brown linoleum from part 1. So we'll glue up the hull, and then I'll probably just cut them out and put them in individually, rather than trying to put the whole sheet and cut all the bits out. But I'll see how it goes anyway. But yeah, well, the same deal as the lower hull. I'll dry fit all these parts together, and then we can see the order of gluing it up, because obviously with the multiple deck parts, potentially I could get the order a bit muddled up, so doing it dry without glue will show me the best way to do that, and I'll do that next. So there's an actual error here, because working from the bottom up, we've got V2, which is the full deck, and then V3, 4, and 5 are half deck, so we'll have to make one for each side. So 3, 4, and 5. The problem we have is, if you look at the drawing, V2 is the bottom, correct? And then the next one up is V4, and then next one above that's V3. Apart from that making sense from a numerical 2, 3, 4, V3 has like a witness mark here with a cutout, and then V4 has the actual cutouts. So if you go by the instructions, you can't see the cutouts as you can in the drawing. So it should actually be V3, V4. And then if you hold them together, you can see the witness mark on the bottom one with the lip, and then you've got the recess, which is correct. Also, where the bulkheads fit in, you've got less of a slot on the lower one, so you actually have a wider gap. on the top, and then that corresponds to the bulkheads. So if we got number 3, so we've got 1, 2, 3, you can actually see the bottom slot's longer than the top, and that corresponds with the slots here. So if we slide this one's in, you can see the both decks are flush at the back, the bulkhead's flush on the edge, and then it fits perfectly in the top. So just be mindful that V4 is actually V3, and V3 is V4. It's a small point to make, but could catch you up. So what I'll do is I'll dry fit these from what I can gather. You build up the two sides with V3, V4, all the bulkheads. Then you put in the main longitudinal ribs, which would fit into there. That's a stern. Let's put it in place. And then once you've got the bulkheads in, this will come in and fit together. Okay, so I did the dry fit, and it highlighted a problem we have with the slots. So the vertical spines fit perfectly in that slots there. However, when it came time to put the bulkheads on, it highlighted an issue. So we'll have a look here. So as you can see, if you line them up with the slots, these ones here are in line, this one's out of line, that one's in line. And then when we go to the rear section, again, lining these up because we know these fit. These are okay, these are okay, that's out, okay, okay, okay. And the last one, second last one's okay, that one's out, as you can see. So we need to eliminate what the issue is, whether this ones are correct and this one's on the decks are wrong. So what we want to do first is check against the templates, because remember, if we didn't have the laser cut, we would glue these on and cut them out. So if we try this, I've got a feeling these are all going to be exactly the same. And if we push it forward, we can see they all line up. If we try the ones here, they line up. And the rear one, they line up. So even if we made them by hand, they're going to be out. So we need to see some other method of determining which is the correct one, whether it's the horizontal or the vertical. The other thing we can go by is on the upper deck, we have, on the gun deck, which sits higher, we have the paper covering, which I'm guessing is for the linoleum on the deck. So we think this one's wrong. We think this one's wrong. And you can't see it, but this bottom one here is wrong. So that's the three that don't match. And see how these are line up. So, sorry. That lines. Okay, so this one's out as well. Which corresponds to that one anyway, so that's correct. This one's out, and that corresponds to the same one. And of course, because we seem to be matching, this one's out as well. Right, so let's do it this way then. So deck 5, which is the uppermost deck, is where this gets glued onto. And as we can see, these all line up perfectly. Well, give or take. So if we assume, because this is the ones I'll be cutting these out. If we assume that this is correct, and we've already established that these are matching, which we showed earlier, that each of the horizontal decks are correct, or all in alignment. The top deck lines up with the deck that we're going to be putting this on. So we'll assume this is the correct one, which means okay, so I've cut in the extra slots, or the new slots. So what we'll do is we'll fit the bulkheads. Okay, so you might be able to see that was the original bulkhead, that's the new one, and it fits in there. So same here. The original, that's a new one, and as you can see, it fits in there. And at the back, the original, and then the new one's inboard, and it fits. So that's where the bulkhead's sitting in there nicely now. So on the deck 5, I didn't know how much to go to open them up, so I've just cut off maybe half a slot width again. So hopefully, we'll slide this in. It shouldn't push the bulkheads out of position now. Should be enough space for them to there we go, that's going in a lot easier than the fight I had previously. Okay, so it looks like I've trimmed enough off. So, with that in, pull it up. Everything's sitting flush against the bottom deck, and the bulkheads are all more or less vertical. So obviously there's a fair bit of play in there now, but I needed that to stop this deck 5 pushing everything over. So if you have a look at the gun deck, Okay, little bits here and there, but on the whole, the majority of them's lining up. But what I'll do is, because these are full depth, I'll trim out the white area, which is accounting for the bulkhead, but then I'll just slice them. Or sorry, what I'll do is I'll just extend that white. So I'll make these individual bays rather than trying to glue this onto here, then pushing it in again. So with that there, we should be able to get this lined up. Okay. So again, that will give you an idea. That one didn't go in, but there we go. So what I think I might do is, now that I've kind of eliminated or fixed the problem, I actually think I will glue these spines onto the deck. Then I'll make up both halves of the upper decks and then fit them in. And then lastly, we'll cut these out and glue them in place. Okay. So the gluing operation, and that's much the same as what I did in part one, so I wouldn't bother going over it again. But I'll put these in first anyway. Make them square, and then we'll install that. Okay, so I've glued up all the formwork now, and I'm going to stop this part at this stage. So what I did was, for the V5s, which is the last of the upper decks, I've enlarged a couple more of the slots just to make sure that all these bulkheads are vertical. So, like I say, I'm going to stop at this stage now. I'm not going to go and attach the linoleum deck, purely because there's still sanding and various touch-ups to do just to get it aligned. So if we take the first part here to give you an idea, that's kind of what we're looking at now between the upper and lower hull sections. So the plan now is to, I'll work on some of the other bits and pieces now, which I guess from a modelling viewpoint is a bit more interesting. And then in the background, I'll work on the lower hull, because like I mentioned previously, I want to fill in the sections in the lower hull for the hull skins to go on, but I haven't decided what method I'll do yet. So I'll build some of the upper bits and pieces, and in the background I'll make a video of it, but in the background I'll fill in these sections here, which I'll show, and then I'll come to do this, the hull skins I'll show as well. So that's kind of enough for these first two videos, just to show the formworks going together. That's really it. What I've done, I'll take some stills, because I've got a size comparison between this and the Borodino that I'm building as well, just to give you an idea of the size. But yeah, next part will be some actual coloured paper, and we'll start building some of the structures.